Hey, how you doing, everybody? And it's Forest College. Yes, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. This is when it happens when you can't sleep. So you decide to get up and riff on your favorite topic, cinema. Hope everything's going okay out there with you all. Hope you had an interesting weekend. It's cold, really cold here, as you all know. Um, how was your weekend? Are you getting the assignments done? Uh, your final paper? Hopefully, you saw the subjects. Choose one and do a great job. They're worth 20 points, and then your final journal, and then you're done. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about movies until the end of class. And right now, this is a personal journey about cinema and how it shaped my life, still does, still seeking that transcendence through cinema. Um, so I want to talk about movies that change your life. Has a movie ever changed your life? Has a movie ever made you think in a different way and started you on a journey you never thought was going to happen, or take you down a road that is unexpected for whatever reason? Mostly this happens when you're young, like it happened to me in about 1970, 71. Yes, I'm that old, folks. Um, and I saw a trio of films that year that uh, shook my world, and they've never let up. And then you go from there. And the films I'm talking about are El Topo by Alejandro Jodorowsky, an art film of the highest order, uh, a take on a spiritual take on spaghetti westerns. I will post a sample on Canvas. You tell me what you think. Would you watch it on your own? Now, this is the coming out of the heady 60s, and so is it drug induced? Quite possibly. Um, Rock and roll? Quite possibly. But it's also big ideas, major ideas, and an artist who is not an American, born in this South America, made his films, made these films, and this film in Mexico. He's lived in Paris, France, I think most of his life, and he's in his 90s now, so he's still out there. And and this movie, I never seen anything like it. I'd heard about it. Couldn't wait to see it. I was visiting my brother, who was going to school in Berkeley at the time, and it was playing in a theater there. And it was never the same after that. I never seen anything like it. It was a profound experience. Um, it was cerebral. It was had religious aspects to it that I didn't understand at the time. Buddhism, Christianity. It had wild sexcapades, nudity, violence. It is a parody of spaghetti westerns, which are the westerns that came out, made in Spain, made by Italian filmmakers mostly, um, which were kind of trying to mimic our westerns, and they had their own take on it. Clint Eastwood became a star through those movies. Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Sergione was a genius filmmaker who made those films. Once Upon a Time in the West. Somebody should write about him in your final paper. Um, he changed the landscape of not just cinema, but how to make a western in a totally highly um, original way. So El Topo is taking from that as its template and it put it into another atmosphere. Um, Another film that came out that year was Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. And when you're 18 years old, it has a profound effect on you, and you don't know why sometimes. When you're 18, you have this energy that you're not even aware of. Go on. And you don't know how to harness it. And then you see a filmmaker who's a lot older than you, who has shown you something of the human condition that you don't know how to put into words or feelings, but you know you're going through it. And Clockwork Orange came out at a time in our culture, and it was very needed. It was a dangerous film, very violent. It was rated X when it came out, not for there is sex in it, but there's not for that. It's for the violence, and it's based on the Anthony Burgess novel, which is an incredible novel to read because he invents his own language. And if you see the movie Clockwork Orange, they speak the language, the narration. You'll see what I mean. Made a star out of Malcolm McDowell, the lead actor, and it once again transcended the ordinary by such a far reach that it was almost hard to comprehend where how it was even made or where it came from. These are forward-thinking filmmakers. The guy made El Topo and Clockwork Orange. I'm not so sure we're thinking that forward right now. We seem to be in an endless cycle of Marvel Comics to make a lot of money, and the movies seem to be adhering to a certain formula that doesn't seem that profound. Maybe you have a different idea. Convince me. Um, Clockwork Orange came out at a time where still mired down in the Vietnam War. Kubrick is an American, but he's made and lived in Britain, and that's where he doesn't come back to America. He makes all his movies there, and so it's got a foreign feeling to it because it is coming from across the pond. And besides the music, which we never heard before, made on a Moog synthesizer, we never heard that kind of sound before. It sounded like the future. The future was here now. It's about violent street gangs, very operatic in its outlook and its tone. Once again, profound change on my young life. And I saw these two movies on the same day. um, they're almost too much to take in on one day, if that's possible. I saw one in Berkeley, then I had to go to San Francisco to see the other one. And my poor friend Joe had to come along with me, and he wasn't the cinema buff I was. And I think his mind was totally blown, and I don't think he was ever the same again. Joe is no longer with us. But for a moment, he was tagging along with me, and everything in my life was film and movies, everything. It was my escape. It was my escape from reality, the harsh reality of what was going on around me. Uh, I'm getting to the point where I could get drafted into the army and have to go fight in a war, Vietnam War, they called it. And it was a scary, hard time for young people in America. We had an evil president in the White House. This is to give you some cultural background. Richard Nixon, and he was called him Tricky Dick, and he wasn't called that uh, for nothing. And this is long before social media, but he was brought down by doing illegal activities and uh, and actually quit the presidency halfway through his second term. Maybe know about him, maybe you don't care, but history has a tendency of repeating itself. So be careful out there. Lots of things were happening in the early 70s. We're coming out of a very heady time in the 60s. And then it looked like we're going to maybe have a chance at some change with the hippie culture and the Woodstock festivals. And it looked like things might absolutely get, get better somehow. And they got worse, essentially. And these movies started the decade out, and they were showing us the state of things. But they weren't contemporary films. Clockwork Orange is set in the future. El Topo is a Western, and the other movie is a Western also, The Wild Bunch, which I've asked you to talk about. Uh, when I saw that movie, nothing was ever the same again. I'm still trying to understand why it had such a profound effect on me. It did. Um, it's painful for me to watch it now because simply it dredges up all my hopes and dreams and what I wanted to do with my life. And if you don't accomplish that, then you kind of feel wanting. Um, but these movies made me want to take cinema to another level, to a serious level, and to study it, and which I did in college. Wanted me to start writing, which I started writing. Uh, Wanted me to direct films, which was really um, impossible at the time when you're only 18 and 20 years old. Try to figure out how to make a film in Hollywood, not going to happen. These guys all worked outside of Hollywood. They were complete outsiders, and that's how they got their best work done. And they were holding up a mirror to a world that I was totally ready to fall into, like Alice through the looking glass. I was ready. Some people weren't ready. I drug my friends to these things, and they possibly didn't understand why they were what they were or why it should affect them so. It's just a movie after all, is it? So movies that change your life, cinema, can it change your life? Later on, as the decades go on, there are filmmakers that I become enamored with that I need at the time. These guys were important, so important. Then I discovered filmmakers like Terrence Malick, Martin Scorsese, Hal Ashby, Francis Coppola, and their films throughout this decade of the 70s, which is when I was going to film school, um, racked my young world, gave me hope. And then the 80s hit, and the kind of hope started fading when all the sequels started happening. And films like, we've talked about this already, the Superman sequels, the Star Wars sequels, Rocky 1, 2, 3, Rambo 45 sequels, Top Gun. Hell, they're still doing sequels. They just did another sequel of Top Gun. Um, these movies um, were the antithesis of what I was wanting or needing in cinema. And so I had to find other outlets like David Lynch and John Sayles and people like Hal Hartley, who I discovered later. Well, he wasn't around. We're similar in age, and his films had a profound effect on me in the '90s. Simple Men, Trust, Unbelievable Truth, masterpieces of the highest order, in my opinion. Art film, not mass consumption film. You won't see his films at the strip mall, that's for sure, or the Cinemaplex. You have to go to the art houses and be in mostly big cities to see that stuff. and seek it out. That's all I'm saying. Sometimes you have to seek out these things. These films I talked about, Wild Bunch, El Topo, Clockwork Orange, were actually playing in the legitimate theaters. These were out, they're distributed. You'll never see that again. Of course, now movie theaters are essentially dying or dead already. Everything's streaming, so that's a different world we're living in. But movies that changed your life. And then in the 90s, besides Hal Hartley and Pedro Almodovar from Spain, uh, profound effect on me. Quentin Tarantino, his early films, yes. Reservoir Dogs is a masterwork. Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, not so much the new stuff. I'm not that thrilled with it. It's okay if you love it. Hateful Eight, I don't know, it's silly. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I thought it was boring. Um, that's okay. He rewrites history. That's what he does. Is he exciting? Is he entertaining? Absolutely. But I wanted to talk about these early films that changed everything in my life. Maybe this movie that changed everything in your life. Is that possible? Do you think that a film could ever have that profound effect on you? That's how important cinema has been. Then later on, when I got more mature and can understand it more, the great silent films of King Vidor and Abel Gance uh, shook my world even further. And then discovering the films of Ingmar Bergman late in life, I always knew who Bergman was. It was a little too heady for me. It was a little too, I didn't quite get it until I was of the age I could get it. And then boy, did I get it. Persona, Passion of Anna, Winter Light, Shame, Hour of the Wolf, Through a Glass Darkly, 10 or 15 of the most profound films in the history of films. Deep, abiding effect on who you are, who you want to be, who you hope to be. That's where somebody like Stanley Kubrick and Alejandro Jodorowsky, Sam Peckinpah, Hal Hartley, Ingmar Bergman, that's the effect they could have on you. Along with great literature, I hope you guys read out there. I know reading's not a big thing anymore, so much as it was when I was growing up. Novels, uh, it went along with cinema, literature, art, painters, rock and roll, um, music. These things make up who I am, who I still want to be, who I'm still pursuing. I'm still waiting for that next movie. I'm still reading that next novel. I'm still listening to that next musical profundity that will change everything and keep me going and hopeful. Hopefully, you have that outlet also. Um, Today, I was going to talk about trash cinema. And then I decided not to do that. What is trash cinema? Well, have you ever seen a trashy movie? When I mean trashy, low budget, maybe too much sex, too much drugs, too much depravity. Uh, a good example of trash cinema would be Pink Flamingos by John Waters. Do you dare watch it? Trash cinema could be traced back to Reefer Madness in the 40s. It's been around a long time. It's alternative cinema. Queer cinema falls under that. The other. Are you afraid of the other? Or do you just want to play it safe and watch the next sequel of whatever the sequels they're doing now? It's hard to keep track of them. Do you dare think outside your comfort zone? I challenge you. I'll see you next time when the story of cinema continues.